Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns will get back to OTAs this week, starting tomorrow. Today, though, they were out at Westwood Country Club in Rocky River, Browns Foundation charity golf outing. Kevin Stefanski was asked about Deshaun Watson's rehab and what the schedule looks like moving forward for Watson.
We'll see, Mary Kay. I think I'm really waiting on medical when it comes to that. If they say he's ready to go, we'll throw him in there. But until then, we're really trying to keep it, by the day. And he's doing really, really well.
I thought a couple weeks ago you seemed like he wouldn't be every other day in minicamp. Do you still feel like it'll be more than he's doing now?
I think it's all being talked about with the medical groups. And I know you could talk to Deshaun. He wants to be doing everything. But we'll continue to listen to whatever the docs tell us to do.
The last time we talked to you, and we asked you about, Deshaun, you said he looks like himself. Does he look like he's made any progress, or?
What's another way to say
he's feeling better?
He looks like Deshaun Watson. Yeah, I mean, he's again. You guys should talk to him. He's doing everything he's supposed to do. He's attacked this rehab from day one of the rehab. When he gets out there and throws it around, which I know you guys saw last week, looks like Deshaun Watson to me.
With that, let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, he's throwing the football. He's on a schedule. The medical people are going to dictate it. So, yeah. But you have to ask.
Right. I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, the media's only seen him throw once since, he had the shoulder surgery. So you can, and it's OTAs and not everybody's there. So you can only take so much out of it. But I mean, at this point, you kind of have to trust what Kevin Stefanski's saying as far as, the Browns following, this regimen prescribed by Deshaun Watson's surgeon and trying to make sure that everything is good, that there's no setbacks. And it seems like based on the videos that we've seen out there that, not too bad from Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's still time for him to continue to get stronger, to make sure there's no ill effects, like I said, from that surgery. Mandatory mini camps next week, so it'll be interesting to see what the workload is for that. And then, you got a month until training camp, so maybe it'll be interesting to kind of see where he is going in the training camp, if indeed he can go as early as week one. We'll see.
So Joe Blattonio back in town for the golf outing as well. He talked about just how Deshaun Watson has been in the building with the team.
Yeah, it's been a good vibe. When I've been around the guys, everybody seems excited. He seems like he's in a good mindset. It's never been an issue about his work ethic and the way he puts in time in the classroom and stuff. So I think guys are excited. I think we saw flashes last year of the second half of Baltimore and other games. And you look at our win-loss record when he's our quarterback. They're all good signs. So I think it's all the momentum's good. You got some new weapons for him to throw the ball to. So it's exciting time, and it's always about expectations. You got to live up to them, but we're happy to have them because that means we're there and hopefully ready to compete.
And again, the message has been pretty consistent that we've heard throughout.
Yeah, no question about it. Obviously, like we said before, this is such a big year for Deshaun Watson. So to see him go into this offseason and making sure he's getting up to that work rate 100%, it's going to be obviously so important. Joel was talking about just kind of saying what we've all talked about is, the flashes he showed throughout 2023, particularly he referenced the second half of the Ravens game, that perfect second half to lead them to that huge victory. And everybody's thinking, because they got that win, that now all of a sudden this team's a Super Bowl contender. And then we find out just days later that he's going to have season-ending shoulder surgery. It's kind of obviously that was a hugely piece of disappointing news for the Browns, but I mean, they found a way to get through the playoffs, to even make it to the playoffs in spite of that, in spite of all the other injuries. And obviously the Browns had been pretty successful in 2023 when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback. They only lost the one game. That was the Pittsburgh game, the Monday Nighter, which was one of the weirdest games I can remember. Obviously, Watson hurt him with the multiple turnovers, the multiple face masks, 15-yard penalties. That was really the only time last season when he looked like, as far as on the field, with the exception of the Colts game, and you can understand that because he had the rotator cuff issue that was still working through. That Pittsburgh game is really the only time you saw him actively hurting the team as far as his on-field play. The other moments, maybe not as the other games, maybe not as consistent, but you still saw plenty of what made Deshaun Watson the guy that the Browns wanted to trade all the picks for and sign the money to. And signed him to all that money. Now it comes down to, can he do it consistently? Can they stay on the field?
So this one's from The Athletic. It's ranking the NFL contenders for 2024, and they're by tiers. Tier 1, the favorites, it's the Chiefs, 49ers, Lions, Ravens, Bengals. Okay. Tier 2, can they put it together? Texans, Packers, Bills, Eagles, Cowboys, and Jets. Those I have some questions about. Tier 3, need to see more. Browns, Falcons, Colts, Bears, Dolphins. I think some of those, I think the Browns are kind of low there. I get it with Deshaun Watson, but you could say the same thing about Jordan Love. You could say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers hasn't played exceedingly well, and he's been hurt. Jordan Love's had one season. C.J. Stroud's had one season. They were pretty good. Dak Prescott, they got Ezekiel Elliott as their main running back. There's a lot of teams that they have ranked in that second tier that are like, okay.
Yeah, and I would say some of the questions on this list even go all the way up to number 4. I mean, Baltimore lost Mike McDonald, their offensive coordinator. They've got questions about guys they need to replace, and several key players in that defense are gone. With Cincinnati, Joe Burrow coming off his own season-ending injury. We have no idea for certain if T. Higgins will be on the field for them this year. And then we look at the Texans. Obviously, they look like the offseason champs, trading for Stephon Diggs. Can they prove that, 2023 wasn't a one-off? Can they actually be the real deal? We saw, obviously, the Browns in 2018, when Baker Mayfield was the quarterback, coming off that sensational season. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs, but there was so much hype around them. In 2019, they were one of the big disappointments. So the Texans kind of had to prove that wasn't a fluke. Packers, same kind of thing. Buffalo, questions about receiver. The Eagles had that collapse at the end of last season. Dallas, they lost so much on that defense, including Dan Quinn. And the Jets, I've said before, I'm skeptical about where Aaron Rodgers is as far as his health goes, and can he still play close to the guy he was in Green Bay as he's getting towards that age of 40. So certainly, I think outside of the Chiefs, the Niners, and to an extent the Lions, I think other than those 3 teams, there's certainly teams that have a lot of questions, and that gap between 4 and 12 is not that big. And if Deshaun Watson looks like Houston and Deshaun Watson are close to it, and if at least he's protecting the football, no reason the Browns can't contend and really make a serious push to go deep in the playoffs.
All right, so news today, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver for the Vikings. He has reset the wide receiver market. 4 years, $140 million. That includes $110 million guaranteed. Not only the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history, but the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. His deal includes $88.743 million due at signing, the highest non-quarterback guaranteed at signing in NFL history, and it resets the wide receiver market. Along those lines, that's from Adam Schefter. This is Jonathan Jones, another guy that's a national guy. Few teams have anticipated the spike in the wide receiver market better than the Browns. Again, this is not a Browns reporter. This is a national reporter. 2 years ago, they got Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick. This spring, they did a day 3 pick swap to get Jerry Jeudy, signed him to a 3-year, $52.5 million extension. That contract is looking better and better, and you still haven't got Jamar Chase. You still haven't got T. Higgins. CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill's agent is out there saying, yeah, we've had some conversations. It's going to be difficult. And they don't have Amari Cooper, which is probably driving his price up even though he's 30.
Yeah, like I said before, I think Amari Cooper is a guy who certainly aged better than most receivers because his game is not simply predicated on athletic ability. But this kind of goes with the way Andrew Berry's kind of approached a lot of things. It feels like he's been kind of a step ahead in some respects as far as how to approach things. I mean, future picks, it always seems like the rest of the league hasn't quite caught up to the value of future picks being very inflated, is very underappreciated in some aspects. Attacking corners aggressively he has by getting Denzel Ward. Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson all together, and then with receiver as well. And obviously, there's questions about kind of how good Jerry Jeudy is, but a 3 years and $52.5 million, it's a pretty good chunk of change to kind of see, how good he can really be, when he's not necessarily asked to be a number one guy. He's playing with a quarterback in Deshaun Watson, who certainly has high-end talent. It could certainly help take Jerry Jeudy to a different level. So in some ways, the Browns have really maximized this. The next step for the Browns, of course, a receiver. They got to find a young guy in the draft. They got to just keep plugging away at that and see if they can find an investment and a young player that they can develop and get a handful of good years out of him at a rookie contract and see where they go from there.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about Nick Chubb. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I do like what the Browns did in the preseason this year and the offseason. They really did get some good players for, not having the first pick. But then I was looking at, because I always look at highlights of the players. They just showed a highlight of Nick Chubb. And so I started watching it. And I got to tell you, the most important player, in my opinion, for the last 5 years for the Browns, and I love Myles Garrett, don't get me wrong, he's number 2. But nobody has done more for the Browns and been a better player for the Browns than Nick Chubb. Just go back and look at all his highlights. It's ridiculous how good this guy was. And I hope he, heals up well and come back. But I'm putting Nick Chubb right in there with Jim Brown as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to know what you guys think. All right, bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, Nick Chubb, when he's healthy, is the best running back in the NFL. Jim Brown, he's getting in that conversation. Durability, part of the thing with a running back, you got to be durable. It's not his fault that he got his knee injured, but got his knee injured.
Yeah, and I think that the big question with the Browns is, what kind of Nick Chubb are the Browns going to get in 2024? Is he going to be, is he going to somehow be 100% Nick Chubb? Because I don't know how likely that is, but as unlikely as it is, that'd be an incredible scenario for the Browns where all of a sudden in the middle of the season, you get Nick Chubb who's fresh and he looks like himself again. I've said before, even if you get about 80% of Nick Chubb at his peak, I think that's still a very good running back and a guy you could really use and have success with. I mean, I don't know if I would say he's the most important Brown, but I would say he's the heart and soul of the team. You could just see that just from the Thursday night game against the Jets when they brought him out. He came in with the Batman mask and smashed the guitar, and that certainly got the team and the crowd fired up. You could tell they were saving that for such an important game and such an important moment. And obviously, we saw what the Browns did in that game. They blew out the Jets and secured that playoff spot. So I think when you talk about just maybe more so as far as the intangibles and just what a guy means to an entire group, not just on the field but off the field, Nick Chubb, even though he doesn't play one of the most important positions in football, one of the most premium positions of football, his individual value to this team is just so high.
So this is kind of interesting. So after suffering a torn ACL and MCL, like Nick Chubb did in 2011, Adrian Peterson came back and ran for a league-high 2,097 yards to capture the MVP in 2012. Peterson's injury occurred in Week 16 of 2011. Nick Chubb, similar injury last year in Week 2. Nick Chubb is 28 years old now. Adrian Peterson was 27 the year he came back and was the MVP. Not saying that Nick Chubb's going to come back and do it, but there is a guy that has done a similar thing and has a similar skill. It's not a stretch to compare Adrian Peterson and Nick Chubb, I don't think. Peterson did it for a little longer. Let's see if Chubb can come back and continue along that path.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, I don't know in this era if anybody's running for 2,100 yards again. Just
Absolutely.
the way football is.
Yep.
Just the way football is these days. I mean, it's so pass heavy, so leaning towards the passing game and the quarterbacks. I don't know if we'll ever get a guy who runs close to that. I mean, that's otherworldly stuff Adrian Peterson did. I mean, there's a reason he's arguably the best back of our generation, and Nick Chubb certainly, like you said, when healthy, he's the best running back in football, and he's kind of working his way into Adrian Peterson's tier. If he comes back and has another great season, maybe he is the key of the Browns making a deep playoff run, then all of a sudden you can really start to have that conversation of, is he the number 2 behind Adrian Peterson? So it'll be interesting kind of where that all plays out. But I mean, it's hard to discount where Nick Chubb is because of his work ethic and because of just his drive and just how good he is when he's on the field. He's truly definitely one of the best running backs we've seen, in quite a while, and maybe the second best back in Browns history behind Jim Brown easily.
Yeah, and I can see it now. People are, watching going, Dave says Nick Chubb 2,000 yards. That's not what I said. I said it has been done before, that somebody has come back well from that.
As long as nobody puts a bet on it in Vegas saying Dave Bacon told me to do it.
There you go. This is interesting as well. So June 1st is when you update cap space. There's all the June 1st, post-June 1 things. This is via OTC, over the cap. So the Patriots have the most cap space, $46.4 million. Commanders, $43.4 million. Then when we look at things in the division, Bengals $21.3 million. Good luck, you got to pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins coming up. Steelers $18 million, Browns $13.9, and the Ravens $5.9 million. And again, Andrew Berry and the Browns have shown they can create cap space by renegotiating some of the bigger contracts if they so desire. It's just interesting to note where everybody is relative to the cap.
Yeah, and I think with the Browns, with Deshaun Watson's contract, all it takes is simple restructuring, and you're freeing up close to $40 million in space again. Yeah, you're incurring a much larger charge going into the last 2 years of this contract he's in, but the fact that they've already got, a fair enough amount of cap space right now, almost $14 million at this point, not a bad place to be if you're the Browns, especially if you're anticipating yet another cap spike going in the future. It's just part of where Andrew Berry's kind of been in this process to kind of mitigate, obviously dishing out this $230 million fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson, where you really can't get out of it. You have to just kind of balance a lot of things out, and it shows just how good he's been at manipulating the cap and creating those void years and all those sorts of different things. That's why some people joke sometimes that the salary cap is a myth, and maybe in some ways it is. Eventually it does come due, but for the Browns, through heading into year 3 of Deshaun Watson's contract, as far as the cap bill is concerned, I think Andrew Berry's done a pretty solid job at, keeping them in a good space. Yeah,
the other thing is it hasn't kept them from really going out and signing and acquiring people as well. He's had to do some different things, but he's been able to upgrade the roster.
Yeah, I mean, that's just smart, savvy, business by Andrew Berry. Obviously, what I think is hurt more is the fact that he hasn't had a first-round pick in each of the last 3 drafts. That's going to change in 2025. But the fact that he's been able to do this and get this team to where it is right now, with certainly one of the more talented rosters in all of football, from 1 to 53 on the roster, despite this massive contract that Deshaun Watson has, it like you said, it hasn't impacted his ability to do it, and it's been a good job. Plus, when you consider where the Browns are, they really don't have to restructure Deshaun Watson's contract for this season unless they feel they absolutely need to create more rollover money into 2025. So it'll be interesting to see where all that goes.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Kevin Stefanski and Joel Bitonio from today. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. At the Browns Foundation golf outing today, Kevin Stefanski talked about the new kickoff rules and what they have to do to adjust to them.
I don't think anyone knows exactly how this is going to play out. So we'll see if that first game they have their safety out there. They might. I know that ball placement becomes really important because the ball landing at the 10 versus inside the 5 versus, as you know, on the goal line, just in the drills that we've done, the closer that ball lands to the both return unit and kickoff unit, there's a opportunity maybe to gain yards in the kickoff return. So I don't think the premium of ball placement has changed for the kicker. If you have a position player that is really good at it, obviously that's a major bonus for them. But I think so much of it we're interested in, where that ball is placed by your kicker. Because remember, hang time means nothing now. It's just literally how can I hit my spot. Are people going to want to put the ball at the goal line inside the 5? Are they going to try to put the ball outside the numbers? There's obviously risk involved when you kick the ball outside the numbers that it could go out of bounds. How do people treat it indoors versus outdoors? Because as you know, at our place, it's one thing to say you're going to place it here, but it's harder to pull off. So I think it's going to be based on each team. Obviously, if you had a position player that you felt could be consistent in ball placement, that'd be an advantage.
So that was relative to Justin Reed, the safety for the Chiefs, who has kicked off when guys have been banged up. Tim, I've said that nobody has any idea how that's going to play out until you get going full speed and do it against another team. You got to plan for it. You got to have a plan, but nobody knows how that's going to play out.
Yeah, we're not going to know really anything until we get the games going, and teams kind of have to show their cards a little bit. And the wrinkles that, teams are going to throw in are going to be wild. I think, who do they put back there, to return the kicks? Who's going to be in the blocking unit? Even Kevin Stefanski bringing up a good point, the fact that they played down by the lake at Cleveland Browns Stadium. We know, especially in that one corner of the dog pound end, the wind really gets really weird. So you could try to put the ball in a certain spot, but when that wind picks that ball up, you almost have no idea where it's going sometimes. So it's going to be so fascinating to kind of see how this plays out. Who really could take advantage, who can master it, and who kind of has to adjust on the fly and all those sorts of different things. But it's certainly going to make the kickoffs far more interesting than they've been in quite a long time, which I think is just really good for the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to put a premium on the return game as well. It's not like it's going to be a touchback. Your return guy is going to become much more important.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting talking about Justin Reed being, for example, have your position player kick the football. I mean, could you imagine what kind of benefit that is? Because now you have 10 blockers, 10 guys obviously trying to bring on the kick returner. If he gets by all of them, then the only guys left is the kicker, and kickers aren't always the best tacklers. So if you somehow have a position player back there who does that, that's icing on the cake. But to your point also with having the returners, obviously that's so important, and it's going to be fascinating to see, like I said, who teams put there. Are they going to put stars back there? Is it going to be running backs? Is it going to be receivers? Now that you pretty much are forced to give the other team a chance to return the football with these rules, it's going to be interesting to see what teams do as far as who they put back there, and it'll be nice to kind of see the return of the returner.
So Joel Bitonio, also at the golf outing, was asked about the expectations for this year's team and how they increase because of the playoffs being made a season ago.
I think you want to get a spot in the dance because if you have a chance, you have a chance to win. But I don't think we're satisfied with that. Like you said, I think early in my career it was like, hey, let's make the playoffs. And now it's like, we got to win some games in the playoffs. We got to make some things happen, especially, you get older in your career. You don't know how many years you have left of playing, and now you feel like you're squandering opportunities when you lose those games. But the expectations, you always want to try and win your division to start, and then you kind of go from there. But yeah, losing in the first round or in the wild card is not how we want to end our season.
And Tim, the other thing that we kind of learned, winning the division means a home game, and you want a home playoff game.
Yeah, and the Browns now haven't won the division since the late 80s, so they don't know what that's like to host a playoff game. There's a whole generation of Browns fans that have never seen a home playoff game. Cleveland Browns Stadium, not to belabor the point at all, but that stadium has not seen a home playoff game. Obviously, this division is very tough. You got to go through Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow to win the division. but certainly it can be done. The Browns have beaten both those teams over the past couple seasons. And Joel Bitonio talking about, higher expectations. That's just natural when you have a team that's already gone to the playoffs. They were the #1 wild card going in, even though they got blown out in Houston. Best wild card team by record in the AFC. So certainly going into this year, if you have a healthier Deshaun Watson who's going to play, you would hope almost all the games, would you expect your starting quarterback to play? You would assume that this team should be able to do better than they did a year ago. And really, if Watson is who the Browns hoped he could be, you would have to imagine this team's a true division title contender.
Yeah, I mean the next step is back-to-back seasons where you're in the playoffs. That's kind of what Joel Bitonio's kind of getting at.
Yeah, it's all about consistency and the idea of winning culture that comes from having success, and success breeds success, as they say. And obviously, it's been since the 80s that the Browns have gone to back-to-back postseasons. Going there twice in 4 years, it's a good accomplishment. Not a lot of teams in the NFL have done it, but yeah, that's the next step is, can you get there consistently? Can you keep playing into late January? Can you even sneak your way into February? Can you get to 20-plus games in a season? Can you even, get to the conference championship game, have it be one win away from the Super Bowl, where obviously this team has never been before? It's just a matter of just making sure that they pick up where they leave off, understanding that what they did a year ago, really, it's kind of meaningless. Now it's just about going out and trying to do it again. So it'll be interesting, again, with the experience this team had of winning the way they did a year ago, how that translates to 2024 and whether they can prove that, this team is a true, consistent playoff team.
So this one's from the Bleacher Report. One player each NFL team should consider trading before the 2024 season. For the Browns, they say Dorian Thompson-Robinson. DTR will be hard-pressed to learn much from his spot on the practice squad, which is where he's headed. At this point, the best thing for both players and team may be another team expressing interest in an athletic young signal caller, while the potential to at least develop into a quality backup. I don't know. He was a fifth-round pick, Tim, and he was pressed into service because he was the backup, and Watson got hurt. Fifth-round quarterbacks, you usually don't want them to see the field for a little bit. So I think he can still learn plenty. And the other thing is coming off a hip injury.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of what's going to hurt him, no pun intended, going into this offseason as we continue OTAs into mandatory minicamp, is where he is recovering from his hip injury. And you're right, fifth-round picks, especially quarterbacks, you really don't expect to see those guys on the field. In some ways, you don't want those guys to see the field because those guys need a lot of development, especially if they're a quarterback. There's a reason they kind of fall that far. Maybe they don't have that high of a ceiling, or they have just a lot of growth that still has to be made. And for DTR, I think part of the issue is just needs to get stronger, needs to fill out his body a little bit. But yeah, I think it's way too early to give up on DTR as a potential developmental backup, unless Andrew Berry keeps the model of going with the veteran backup quarterback, like we saw him investing in Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley this offseason. I don't know if DTR is going to go anywhere or should go anywhere. I think he should stay. The Browns should obviously keep him, keep working with him, because there were plenty of flashes to build upon, especially that game-winning drive against the Steelers. So there's plenty to like about DTR as a long-term developmental prospect, but the key term is long-term developmental. These guys need a little time before you're ready to kind of put them in that larger role.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break. We'll hear more about the Browns' new offense. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Joel Bitonio today from the Browns Foundation golf outing talked about some of the differences in this offense under Ken Dorsey.
There's some different terminology and stuff. I think the identity of the offense is very similar, but I think there's new wrinkles and new, like I said, terminology. Like, once you've been in the league for 10 years now, you've ran pretty much every offense imaginable, and it's now just like putting those plays into the system. So there's some new code words that I'm like, wait, I think that was a different code word last year, or that was a different play call. So you just got to kind of wrap that stuff. But I think in the passing game, they've definitely evolved. I don't know the details of every route, but it seems like there's some new wrinkles and some new things that will, some motions, some just different things that might not, if you read a play off the playbook, sound different. But when you look at it, I think it's going to add a little bit more totality to the offense.
Now, the other thing they did say, Tim, is they're still going to run the football. It's not like they're going to, completely forget about the run. And when you have the amount of money invested in the offensive line that the Browns do, they're going to run the football. But it is going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, considering the overhaul they made on the offensive staff, bringing in a new offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, bringing in a new offensive line coach, and Andy Dickerson, certainly it's going to be different. Even in the run game, you would imagine with what Andy Dickerson's bringing in from Seattle, maybe some of those concepts will be worked in. But what Joel was talking about with the offense, the terminology is almost always the same because there's only so many new concepts you can kind of create. But mentioning specifically pre-snap motion, the Browns really didn't do that a lot in the last couple of years under Kevin Stefanski, so that's an interesting evolution. On our site, I know Mary Kay Cabot's talked plenty about the choice routes that they're going to run and really running it based on what the defense is doing. That's an interesting wrinkle. And I think as an offense, as a football team in general, when it comes to Kevin Stefanski, you always want to keep bringing in new ideas. You always want to continue to evolve and adapt. That's what the great coaches do, is they always want to continue to grow and build off their initial foundation. And that's how you see teams, continue to stay successful, is trying to stay ahead of that curve and continuing to evolve and build on what's already been established. So we'll see how that continues to evolve in 2024.
Kevin Stefanski, also at the Browns golf outing, talked just about Elijah Moore and how his role in this new offense will change a little bit.
Yeah, I think evolving is a great word. I think he's getting better as a player. We're lining him up in different spots. He has the mental ability to line up in different spots. There's some newness, I'd say, that we're excited about for Elijah. But, I look back at his last year with us and some of the big plays he made for us. And as you know, he got a ton of opportunity in that Jets game with Amari going out, and he's having a great game, and he got injured. So I think he's somebody that knows that there's more there, but I don't want to be dismissive of a really good year that he just had.
I know you guys were trying him in a bunch of different spots early last year. Did you learn anything about him in particular?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's our job as coaches. You try things in camp, and then you try it in the games, and then sometimes you expand those roles. Sometimes you pivot in those roles. So definitely we learned more about Elijah over the course of the season, and he's very vocal. He'll communicate with me and with the coaches and kind of say what he's seeing. So he's been a great partner.
And Tim, that's another guy. There's stuff there that you got to unlock. It's similar to Jerry Jeudy. Both of those guys can play significantly better than they have in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's the challenge of Ken Dorsey, is making sure you can maximize all the moving parts of the offense. And we saw flashes of what Elijah Moore is. I think obviously early in last season, I think he was misused, kind of trying to make him Deebo Samuel, when the reality is that's just not kind of the player Elijah Moore is. Deebo Samuel, I don't want to use the term unicorn, but there's so many. He's just got such a unique build for a wide receiver that's why you can use him in those certain ways. But then using Elijah Moore much more differently than in the second half of the season, particularly with Joe Flacco, I think really that opened his game up a little bit. He seems like a guy that could be really dangerous after the catch, and I'm fascinated where he's going to go now that he's got another year in Cleveland, more comfortability with his quarterback, his offensive line, his fellow receivers. Now that he's more comfortable, and obviously in the last year of his rookie contract, certainly he's going to have a point to prove. Like I mentioned with the choice routes earlier, I think he's got a chance to really excel on that because of his speed and his ability to change directions pretty quickly. So this has a chance, I think, to be a pretty good year for Elijah Moore to build on what he did a year ago.
All right, before I let you go, this one from Dog Pound Daily. 4 nightmare scenarios for the Browns in 2024. Number 4, they say Jedrick Wills Jr. fails to hold up at left tackle. Number 3, Nick Chubb does not look like Nick Chubb upon his return. Number 2, latest wide receiver additions don't pan out. And number 1, the injury bug sticks around again. You could say the injury, if the injury bug hits any team, it's devastating. That's part of the NFL. The latest wide receivers not panning out could be a big problem because they're counting on Moore and Judy and Tillman and David Bell to all contribute.
Yeah, I think for me, of the 4, that's the biggest thing is, do those guys play? Can they at least get one of those guys to pop more? I mean, is Cedric Tillman ready to take the leap into year 2? Is he kind of understanding what it takes to be a pro and understanding different concepts and how to be a better route runner? Is he going to take those things to heart and really build on some of the good things we saw a year ago and really break out and have a good second season? That's going to be interesting to look at. Can they get Elijah Moore to have a big year in the final year of his rookie deal? What's Jerry Jeudy going to look like playing opposite Amari Cooper, where he's not the number 1 guy, where there's pressure taken off of him, and now he can just kind of go out and play? So that'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there. When it comes to the injury bug, I feel like just based on law of averages alone, it feels unlikely that would happen again. I mean, the run of injuries they had, it was catastrophic. It felt like every week there was another 2 or 3 guys that just popped up on there, and notable guys week after week after week after week. It was unrelenting just how many guys were out of the lineup on a consistent basis, or guys just banged up, not 100%. Obviously, that happens in the NFL. You know, you're going to have guys playing through certain injuries, but the amount of guys who had significant injuries, even in game 1, Jack Conklin going down in game 1 with his knee injury, obviously that was not good to see. Then obviously at tackle, you lose DeJuan Jones, you lose Jedrick Wills Jr., and it was just insane, just the run that just felt like it kept on going for the entire season. So it just feels like, based on just pure luck alone, it feels like that's almost not likely to happen again. It would be kind of a shocker if it was, because then there's other problems at foot, I think.
Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll talk Browns, we'll talk Guardians, we'll talk Cavs. Kenny Roda straight ahead on Sports for CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Former NFL offensive lineman Damien Woody on ESPN's NFL Live, talking about what he sees as challenges for the Browns in 2024.
It's just so hard year over year to sustain that level of success that you have. And by no means, they do have a great defense, but it's going to be hard to duplicate that again in 2024. And then when you look at the offense, multiple injuries along the offensive line. Guys got to come back healthy. Obviously, Nick Chubb coming back from that big injury to his knee. And then Deshaun Watson. Like Mike T said, we haven't seen high-level football from Deshaun Watson since 2020. He's the biggest unknown player that we might have in the National Football League right now. If they can't get that type of high-level play out of the quarterback position, I just think like Mina said, the division is too strong for the Browns to, I think, have that magic sauce that they had last year that propelled them into the postseason.
With that, let's welcome in Kenny Roda from the Kenny and JT Show, News Talk Radio 1480 WHBC. Kenny, I can't argue with much of what Damien Woody said. That's the reason you redesigned the offense, though, is they've been trying to fit Deshaun Watson into a different offense, and I think they're going to design it around him this season.
Well, you need to maximize him, right? And what are his best abilities. Well, number one, the most important ability in any sport is availability, and he hasn't been available that much in the 2 years that he's been with the Browns. So you hope that he recovers from the shoulder surgery and is able to play all 17 games. That's the most important thing. Jameis Winston, nice move as a backup, but hopefully he doesn't have to play, or if he does, it's 1 or 2 games. You're counting on Deshaun Watson bouncing back and getting to that all-pro level. And so you bring in Ken Dorsey along with Kevin Stefanski, and you're trying to design this offense with the pieces, parts around him to get the most out of him that you can. And I agree with Damian. He's the biggest question mark on this football team. Yeah, there are some depth issues on this football team and some minor questions. The major question is, will Deshaun Watson, A, be ready to go week 1, and B, can he play in all 17 games?
So he has been thrown at OTAs. There's a schedule. They're staying on schedule. What are your thoughts? What kind of year do you expect from number 4, Deshaun Watson?
He needs to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, especially if you're going to win in this division, which features Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. The Steelers situation at quarterback, that's up in the air. I don't think it's a great one, but it's a slight improvement, at least over what they had last year. So you're looking at the Bengals and the Ravens, in my opinion, as the 2 teams you're chasing if you're the Browns. You have a lot of great players. Let me rephrase that. You have a lot of very good players and a couple of great players on this team that should put you in the running for the division championship. But Deshaun Watson has to be worth the $230 million they guaranteed him. He has to go out and play like that. And for me, that's a 50-50 toss-up right now. It's a flip of the coin.
So you're kind of in the camp where you got to see it. Is that basically what you're saying?
Show me, don't tell me. All right. And what's he shown us? 12 games. Yes, he's 8-4. That's a good winning percentage. But I was looking at, his numbers throwing the football. He's completed just under 60% of his passes in those 12 games, 2,217 yards, 14 TDs, 9 interceptions. He's rushed for 2 touchdowns. Maybe that's another, factor they'll use more down in the red zone with him. But he's got to throw the ball at a higher percentage rate, right? And he has to have at least a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, if not better than that.
I have a feeling he's going to have a good year, and I credit the Browns. Kevin Stefanski could have said, hey, we won 11 games, we made the playoffs, we're going to run it back with Alex Van Pelt in this. I think he kind of sees it. Deshaun Watson was not a fit for what they were asking him to do.
It looked like Joe Flacco was the perfect fit for that offense last year, right? That was the quarterback that maybe Kevin Stefanski's offense was built around. And Flacco did well, in his time in Cleveland, with the exception of the playoffs when he reverted back to the old Joe Flacco, back-to-back pick sixes. But that was the offense that seemed suited for the quarterback in Stefanski's offense. So Dorsey, Stefanski, whoever else they brought in this offseason to talk, Mike Vrabel, I don't know if he's helping on offense or just special teams as an advisor. They need to figure out, okay, what plays work best for Deshaun Watson and this offense, which ones are he most comfortable with, and go with those. And they're hoping that the addition of a Jerry Jeudy along with Amari Cooper, and David Njoku are the right answers in that passing game.
All right, so we've already I agree with you. The biggest thing they need is they need Deshaun Watson to be the guy that they thought he was when they traded for him. These are the 3 biggest weaknesses other than that on the Browns 2024 roster, according to Dog Pound Daily. Number 3, they say linebacker depth. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah breakout campaign, but he's the only returning starter. Number 2, left tackle. Conklin injured, Jedrick Wills injured, DeJuan Jones injured, so that's going to be interesting as well. And number 1 is backup tight end. And you have Jordan Akins, who has had some success with Deshaun Watson, but if David Njoku goes down, there's not a lot there. So when you look at that, the linebacker depth doesn't scare me as much as a lot of people, because they want to get to 2 linebackers as soon as they can. They have enough safeties that are talented, and they can go 5 down linemen. They're not concerned about the linebacking core. Left tackle's a concern.
It's a big concern for me. I wasn't a Jedrick Wills fan when they drafted him. and he hasn't done anything to change my mind on that. Plus, he's been hurt. Conklin on the other side of that, the bookend tackles are hurt, right? So I like DeJuan Jones. I thought that was a great pickup last year. Now, he got hurt towards the end of the season, but do you consider moving him into one of those two starting spots and making either Conklin or Wills the backup there? Probably not, because they're paying those two guys more, right? And they're hoping they get one more good year if he can play out of Conklin at right tackle. But left tackle is a concern for me, and I don't know what other options they have. Then James Hudson, to me, is average at best. I don't even consider him as a starter. He's a backup only. So you hope that Wills improves, stays healthy, and Conklin can stay healthy. If not, DeJuan Jones, and then I don't know what else after that.
Yeah, and the injury, the way they come back from the injury may determine who the starter is. Remember, Conklin tore both his ACL and his MCL, which the other guys were MCLs only. So his rehab time is going to be a little bit longer.
And that's why you're feeling good about what DeJuan Jones did last year in the time that he did play. He's a mammoth human being, right? And he showed some good athleticism, versatility. So the interior of the line, you feel pretty good about. The exterior, the bookends, not so good based on the injury history.
The other thing is boy, you better hope David Njoku doesn't get banged up and have to miss some time. I mean, he played through some really interesting things a season ago, but there's not much behind him.
No, there's not. And you would think that they would have addressed that more in free agency. Maybe they're waiting, and this is always a possibility, right? We're only at the OTA stage. Maybe they're waiting for a veteran to get released in training camp, right? Somebody they can pick up on the cheap that has experience that they'll bring in to be that insurance policy in case David Njoku goes down. That's the only thing I can think of as far as what the strategy is there, because it's very weak behind Njoku.
All right, so this is from Warren Sharp, Sharp Football Analytics. He tweets this out. Number of drives ending in a punt or a turnover in 2023. And the Browns, you see Cowboys were first at 68, 49ers 75, they were second. Browns were way down at 30th with 136. Only the Jets and Patriots had more drives end in a punt or a turnover. That shows you that's something that's got to change. Again, what has to change if you're going to compete in the AFC North? You cannot be among the league leaders in drives that end with punts and turnovers.
No, you need to score touchdowns, field goals, and hope that your defense creates opportunities for you on a short field by getting more turnovers. It's amazing they won 11 games with that stat, right? That tells you Jim Schwartz and that defense, at least at home last year, how well they played. So that's got to get better, and that's probably one of the reasons that they got rid of Alex Van Pelt or whatever he did. I don't know if he designed, you heard that he was involved with everything. How much, we don't know, but some of that's on Stefanski, and you hope Dorsey, with a new set of eyes, can look at this and say, all right, here's where we can, shrink that stat or move up to less punts and less turnovers in that statistical category.
Kenny Roda from 1480 WHBC and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the Cavs and Guardians. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers and the Guardians. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Here's a quick question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being highest, how confident are you that Kobe Altman and Dan Gilbert will make the right choice for head coach of the Cavs? Take care now. Bye-bye then.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Kenny, you look at it, man, 1 to 10, maybe a 5 or a 6. I mean, And I'm basing that on the roster construction. There's some issues there, and they haven't addressed them. And I don't know if they're going to address them.
The coaching hire, I did not have a problem with firing J.B. Bickerstaff. I was lukewarm on J.B. Bickerstaff. You got to give the guy credit, right, from taking a team when John Bielik wasn't the answer, right, and getting them to the playoffs in back-to-back years, winning a playoff series. But you look at that and you go, man, the offense, it just doesn't look right when all the pieces are there healthy. They seem to play better when guys were injured, some of the key players. So I didn't have a problem with moving on from JB, did a great job defensively. Offensively, I had my questions about him. The question, though, is this. Who's the best fit for what this roster is? And we don't know what this roster is yet because we don't know if Donovan Mitchell is going to sign an extension. If he does Darius Garland want out, as there are reports on social media that he would ask to be traded if Donovan Mitchell inks that $210 million extension? If Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to sign that extension, right, then do they elect to trade him? And who do you get back in return for Donovan Mitchell? And that means you keep Garland, Allen, and Mobley as, the big three, if you will. And if I'm a head coaching candidate, I kind of want to know what I'm getting into before I sign a contract. And maybe that's why we haven't seen them sign a coach yet to be the replacement for J.B. Bickerstaff. Now, can't do anything with Donovan until after the NBA Finals comes to a conclusion to find out one way or the other. So the names we've heard, who was it? Kenny Atkinson, James Borrego, Chris Quinn, and I believe it was Johnny Bryant, as I look down at my cheat sheet here, the Knicks assistant, as the four that they've requested permission to talk to and have been granted permission to talk to. So at least they've started the process. We'll see how quickly it ends.
Yeah, and I'm with you with J.B. Bickerstaff. My question is, who are you going to replace him with? These guys, right. None of these guys have had a lot of success. None of them had any success as a head coach in the NBA. Remember, Kenny Atkinson, who everybody's talking about, Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic pretty much, it wasn't Luka Doncic, it was Kyrie Irving and Kevin Garnett ran him out of Brooklyn when he was the head coach. So he's had some issues with star players already. That's, you throw up the red flag.
Well, those two are hard to coach, right? KD.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
They're hard to coach, and it is kind of working out. Dallas is in the finals, but that's a former player in Jason Kidd, a former point guard, right?
Yep.
That's dealing with those two superstar point guards, and it's working. We'll see what they do against the Celtics. But, none of these guys have had great success as a head coach, right? And there's the two that we mentioned out of that four. Then the other guys, Chris Quinn, he's been with Spoelstra for 10 years in the Miami Heat coaching department, right? He also played there, and he played it. I didn't even realize this. He was with the Cavs for a cup of coffee. So this is a guy, if you're looking at pedigree or culture, he knows the Heat culture. So do you want to go young, inexperienced, no head coaching experience whatsoever, and go with a guy like Quinn or Bryant, right? Or do you want to go with somebody who's at least been a head coach and then try and get one of those other guys to be his assistant, so you have your Ty Lue to your David Blatt in case something else doesn't work out? Somebody told me that's something to keep an eye on as well. So for me, I don't have a favorite as of yet. I'm still doing more research on that. But the other thing that you have to keep in mind is which of these guys have ties to Donovan Mitchell should the extension go through. And one of those guys for sure is Johnny Bryant, as he had ties, I believe, with Mitchell in Utah. So again, I'm doing research just like they're doing research, and those are the names that have surfaced. So we'll see if it's one of those four when it all comes to a close, or if there's somebody else out there we're not even talking about yet.
And again, the main thing is, you can't afford to take a step back. The goal has to be get to the Eastern Conference Finals. So you're going to do that with a guy who is first-year head coach. I have my questions about that.
Yeah, I have my questions as well, but I at least give them credit for saying we're not standing pat, okay, at least with the coach. Now, I didn't agree with Kobe Altman, and I wrote it down here. This is what he said in his press conference. He said, I don't see the need to make sweeping changes. And when asked about the backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, he said, I don't see why we should break it up. He thinks it's overblown that they don't mesh. Well, I totally disagree with all of that. And you can give me all the analytics and all the stats that you want to back up. We can make numbers say whatever we want, right? What I see with my own eyes is Garland and Mitchell, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. Now, will a new coach coming in be able to change that? Maybe. Okay. And maybe that's one of the reasons they got rid of JB. They think that's the reason why it hasn't worked as well as it should. But for me, what I see with my own eyes, Jared Allen and Mobley together on the floor with Mitchell and Garland. I know they were 18-10 in 28 games, but they went 18-2 when Garland and Mobley were out, and they went with the 4 guards, 1 big with Jared Allen in there during the season. So something's got to change there, whether it's the coach coming in and being able to make the necessary changes in the offense, or you move some players. And if it were me, if Donovan Mitchell stays, I'm looking at moving Darius Garland.
Yeah, and I would agree. We'll see how that plays out. All right, let's turn our attention to the Guardians. First place in the American League Central, one of the best records in the American League. Power rankings have them in top 5. How's this team winning? When you look at it, how is this team winning?
Yeah, a lot of people are asking that question. And guess what? Even the people in their front office are probably asking that question. First-year manager, right? He comes in, he's never managed, and forget just that he's he's a first-year manager, he's managed somewhere else. No, Stephen Vogt has not managed anywhere else. He's just removed from playing a few years, right? He comes in, he's given this team that did absolutely nothing in the offseason, right? They were worried about their TV deal and the money coming in, so their biggest free agent signing was who? The backup catcher, Austin Hedges, right? And so I had low expectations. I had them, I think, for 76 wins on the year, and now they've got one of the best records in baseball. And how are they getting it done? Bullpen first and foremost, right? That's been the key. And those guys have answered the bell from the 5th inning on because of the injuries to starting pitching, as well as only getting 5 or 6 innings tops out of most of the starters this year, right? And Jose Ramirez is proving he is truly an MVP candidate, putting up the numbers, 57 RBIs in his first 58 games. He won a game the other day, stealing second base and then scoring from second base on a pass ball, wild pitch, whatever it was, and he creates runs. Naylor's hitting home runs. That's good. They've moved up in the standings in home runs. They were dead last year. They're at least middle of the pack this year, but it's about the bullpen. It's Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan as a leadoff hitter, batting 350, 360, whatever it is now that he's back from the injured list.
All right, along those lines, so quality starts is when a starting pitcher completes 6 innings, gives up 3 runs or less. Guardians are among the bottom 6 in quality starts, which means their bullpen is absolutely getting fried. You see, Guardians and Mets, 17 quality starts. White Sox, Marlins, 15. Brewers, 14. Athletics, 13. Just by the teams that they're surrounded, that shows you quality starts matters. The question and the concern I have, and I don't want to throw water. This bullpen has been outstanding, but they are getting absolutely fried, and we're just starting June.
They need to get better starting pitching from the guys they have, and we did the Kenny and JT show on WHBC from the ballpark a couple of weeks ago, and we had Tom Hamilton on as a guest. And Hammy, we talked about, he said he thinks and this isn't from any inside information. He said, look, I'm just looking at it, and everybody talks. They need to go out and get some starting pitching help because Bieber's done, right? Gavin Williams, you don't know if you're going to get him back anytime soon. He's got the elbow issue. He had an injection. He's on a rehab stint now, but you don't know when or if you're getting him back. Carlos Carrasco just came off the IL. He got beat up a little bit yesterday. So that's the area they definitely, and when you think about the Guardians, what do you think about? You think about starting pitching, right? Carl Willis, and they've developed it through the years now. Well, they're almost out of starters at the minor league level. So this is where maybe you go out and you trade for a starter before the trade. Don't wait till the trading deadline. If you think this team has a chance to win the division, And why not, as you look at every team, Minnesota, KC, Detroit, go out and get a starting pitcher now to save that bullpen. So like you said, they don't tax it and those guys' arms are dead by the time, September rolls around.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The American League Central, nobody is going to blow you away. Teams are playing better than expected, including the Guardians, but the division is there for the taking. Kenny Roda, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Kenny.
Enjoy it all the time, David. Thanks.
Kenny Roda, make sure you check him out. The Kenny and JT Show, News Talk Radio, 1480 WHBC. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.